flagship program, very quickly, because everybody seems to be part of the region, is the Caricom Single Market and Economy, which is hoping at the highest point of its activity will be creating a seamless economic space for us, opportunities for investment, and opportunities for us to really shift from looking at national markets and national resources to regional markets and resources. Our work at the regional level and as a region is guided by the Treaty of Chaguaramas at the CARICOM level, 15 countries, and at the OECS level, 6 to 8 countries by the Treaty of Basse-Terre, which was agencies with specific mandates to treat with various aspects of ICT for development. We obviously have youth with a lot of ability to develop applications. All those applications are still in the gaming sector. There's a mobile explosion. If you look at our numbers, particularly some of the countries are evolving with over 100% penetration with regard to mobile penetration, and so that is hopefully a good thing. We have some ICT legislation which missing from my point of view is the sector intervention. We have very active, productive sectors, but those are not being married very well with ICT, and so we are missing the opportunity to really get a lot more value from what we do. Application development and relevant usable content as well continues to be an opportunity for us, but also continues to beset us as we try to develop as a region. ICT was declared a priority in 2011 by our heads, and they've continued to give that political support. In 2013, the heads mandated, because we had a hard time with the ICT ministers meeting, and that is because the industry changed in about 2007, 2009, to have telecoms now be a part of ICT. And so member states that had telecoms ministers went ahead and did sort of created an ICT ministry or an IT ministry, and then there's a communication minister. So getting the ministers to meet was very hard because no country would send 4 ministers out to one meeting. It's being consolidated a little better, but heads mandated last year that they meet urgently, and they did so in January of this year. And they also heads also mandated that all the councils of our community, the things we talk about, COTED, COSAD, the Legal Affairs Council, and all of those councils consider ICT developments at their meetings, particularly in this year and next year, so that the impetus and the awareness could be spread a little more across the high level of the regional construct. In March 2014, when the heads met themselves, and I wanted to just reinforce this, they strongly urged all member states to affirm or reaffirm ICT as a priority, because although we speak about it, and most of us may be the converted in the room, a number of us are not actively infusing ICT into all our functions, into all our processes at the national level particularly, and obviously at the regional level too. Heads identified and discussed a lot of barriers at their meeting. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they were really seized and really had a very active discussion with regard to our difficulty in achieving economies of scale. None of our countries is large enough to go it alone, and so they were well seized of this and identified it as a barrier. The high cost of broadband connectivity, I'm sure we all are aware of, particularly in the countries that have not fully liberalized their telecom sectors, and I won't name them today, but I've decided I'm probably going to start walking around the region and naming and shaming some people so that we start to get it right. The lack of appropriate skills, particularly in math, science, technology, and engineering, those STEM subjects, and now even as the world evolves from STEM to STEAM, even in the art subjects, STEAM, we are not getting enough traction to get the types of application developers and the types of ICT people in the ICT sector. Absence of a culture of innovation was one of the things they talked about a lot, and how do we instill that in our young people, in all our people, so that they can see themselves as active participants in the ICT arena. Other things, lack of collaboration with regard to content. We don't showcase our festivals enough, our food, our music, our dance. Our heritage is lost. It's only known to us in our face-to-face stories and in some of the Anansi books and a few other regional writings that we know of. The the inability of our regional institutions really to foster collaboration and to help us share those resources across member states was one of the other things which came to the fore. And so they've been working to make sure that the institutions work a little more cohesively and so help us to do the work that we have to do day to day at the national level. A lot of the other things are self-explanatory, fragmentation with regard to how we purchase, how we treat with policy development, how we treat with program and policy implementation helps to fragment us, but also has a very high cost factor to it. Our small businesses supposedly are about 50 to 53% of our GDP, contribute that, but yet we don't have they can't invest in ICT, and we're not developing programs enough to help them use ICT in a more cohesive or cost-effective way. Others relate to the limited relationship between public and private entities, and they've been working very hard. If you look at the news, you see that the heads and very high-level meetings, such as the Council on Trade and Economic Development, has started to engage with the private sector. Harmonization I spoke about before, and our high debt to GDP ratio in quite a few countries is something that is constantly on their mind. I think somebody was looking at indices yesterday or in the other room, but heads were also very seized that we're not innovating and we're not competitive, and the two were inextricably linked. You notice on the left for innovation, and this was a 2012 or 2013 study, only 5 of our countries, and they're not doing very well, 47 out of 148, 78, and so on. And on the competitiveness side, only 6 of our countries even made the list. Now, 6 out of a possible 20 is not even a good 1/3, so we're not doing as well as we probably think we are. The council, the ministers who met in January, made this statement, and I wanted to share it with you. They recognize that we are transitioning from an information society to a knowledge society to a digital society. And the digital society is engendered and comes alive when we have when our economy is creative, when our people are creative, and when those people are also highly educated and able to create new goods and services from the digital technologies available to us. I thought it was a very solid statement coming out from the ministers in this January. And then the heads further reaffirmed that statement by recognizing that the digital economy provides an important key for changing our economic landscape in the region. So we have the attention of, I think, the highest level of policymakers, so the rest is sort of up to us. That digital economy, again, heads deliberated and talked a number of things, but the words that came out were creative and dynamic, innovation, enabling a generation of wealth for all our people, young, middle, old. It should be inclusive and collective, keeping with the tenets of our regional integration movement. It must be collaborative, obviously, and people are empowered by the availability of the information, and that people generate the knowledge through interaction, collaboration, connecting, sharing, etc. So heads are on the same space with us. At the global level, they also, I don't want to forget that, they also recognize that the complexity is increased because we have a number of agencies and entities to deal with as well as we plan and develop the Caricom digital economy. WSIS is the process from the UN, which is the World Summit on the Information Society. WTO, I hope everybody knows. Anybody who doesn't know WTO? And GATS, both with 1 T and 2 Ts. ICANN, in the room, I think, several of them. Intelsat, Sherman, you are? Internet Society, all of these, many, many players that we also have to interface with as we go along our daily work as we try to build the Caricom digital economy. Having said all that, the priority areas that they came up with, not earth-shattering, but definitely something that we need to work on as a region together so that we get the maximum value. First one is a single ICT space, which was hoped will enhance our environment for investment and production. Second one is bringing technology to our people and transforming them to digital citizens and digital entrepreneurs. Cybersecurity goes without saying. After we do all these wonderful things, we have to make sure that it's secure. Mobilization of resources. foremost and utmost always on the minds of the heads and the ministers. How do we mobilize not necessarily only money, technical and human resources to really build this digital society, and also developing the Caricom, what they're calling the Caricom digital agenda, which is in keeping with international standards and international planning. If you notice, a number of regions are now also developing their digital agendas, for example, the EU. And that digital agenda will be supported by some document. It's fine. This is fine. Supported by a document, but it's obviously going to also need to be a living activity where we look at all the policies and strategies we have, see what is good, what is workable, and develop a digital agenda for 2025 they want us to aim to, but also beyond that. I tried to put it in a picture because, again, at the conversation level with the heads of government, they wanted to see a lot of things, and it's obvious that they're passionate about it. Greater public sector use is one of the things, and citizen adoption of e-government. Expanded job creation, I think, resonates with all of us. Everybody in here probably knows 10 people who are looking for a job. Entrepreneurship and new business development. Growth in research and innovation, and we had a very strong call from Suriname 2 months ago at the COTED that we must put advanced research in ICT as a top priority, and I agree. Looking at how we could extend the Caricom brand, smart cities was one of the things that they cottoned onto and wanted to enforce. Their dream is that by 2025 at least, each member state will be able to identify a smart city, totally powered digitally, and one of the other heads put in an interesting addition, which I liked, that every household must have a graduate, and I thought that was a very interesting twist on the smart city concept, underpinned, of course, by highly educated and well-trained people, and facilitated by better connectivity and seamless access to the broadband high-speed networks that we need. So they have a picture in their mind, and it is my job and your job to help them get there because it helps all of us in the end. The context for the single ICT space, as I said, is not earth-shattering, not even new. We had a regional digital development strategy. How many people know that? Hello? Okay, 3, 4, maybe. Developed by the Caricom Secretariat, but it was on a mandate from the heads of government, all of our heads of government. And so it was approved in 2011, but developed between 2008 to 2010, thereabout. And the single ICT space was one of the recommendations there. So in fact, the heads are now just coming back to remind us about the recommendations that we ourselves approved and said we would do. And it's based on the strong guiding the weaker. We shouldn't be competing with each other. No country left behind, or not competing in a negating way. Identifying projects which are replicable across the region and building on individual country strengths. That was the premise on which the digital strategy was built. And so looking at bringing it back to the fore, as the heads did in January, they wanted to reinforce that the digital strategy, the tenets still exist, and they also wanted us to bear in mind the barriers as we go forward in building it. The framework for the single ICT space is not, again, anything perhaps new, but built on very strong ICT infrastructure. And the middle layer is where we connect, support, collaborate with each other. And at the top level is where the real fun starts, when we start to develop our entrepreneurial spirit, look at innovation. And yesterday we had a very good presentation, I don't think the gentleman is here, about the types of innovation that we could perhaps examine as a region, whether it is true innovation or incremental innovation. And I rather like that because I think some of us spend a lot of time thinking what can be new tomorrow rather than looking at something that's already there and enhancing it incrementally. Content and applications, and of course, education and capacity building as one of the serious building blocks. Bringing technology to the people, I'm just going to talk about single ICT space in this one. The others are sort of self-explanatory. It's particularly important because we have a number of pictures evolving in the region. If we are to believe all the studies that are done in our region, it says that we have a lot more people we have a lot of youth, 16 to 35, about 65% I heard the other day. But then it also said that we had a very high level of people who are 55 to 75. And obviously, as we know, some of our national rules say that some of those people need to retire at 55. So for me and for the other policymakers across the region, it's constantly thinking as to how we could re-engage even those people who are retired or about to retire into this workforce where we obviously don't have enough people. And you notice that there's a big gap between the sort of 35 and 55. Those people, that age group is missing. I'm still in there, but that age group is missing. So bringing the technology to the people means really raising the profile on e-government and m-government, since we have this wonderful set of mobile activity happening in the region. We already have an e-government strategy, so it means just implementing that strategy. Looking at open data across government in particular, and then hopefully building it out across the other sectors to stimulate innovation. We simply do not have the monies or the other resources to deal with licensing, deal with being boxed into particular products. No offense to any providers in the room, but the region simply cannot take on that cost as a daily, almost yearly cost. Looking at specific applications in our productive sectors, some of them are mentioned there: agriculture, tourism, transport. How do we use the creative skills as a source of competitive advantage? We have very bright people. We hear that all the time. What are we using these bright people to do? How are we channeling them? How are we helping them? The ones who are maybe bright but haven't had a chance to graduate in formal school environment, we're looking at different paths to graduation, such as developing, persons might have heard of CXC's new course called Digital Media. Anybody? Okay, so we're looking at seeing if we can engage CXC to develop 4 or 5 courses such as the digital media one, so that somebody who's technologically gifted can do those 5 courses or 3, whatever they need to pass, and to be acceptable for our regional standards, so that they will be considered graduates as well and can enter the workforce a lot more seamlessly. So all of those things are going on and being thought about in the single ICT space. E-inclusion I mentioned before with regard to the aging, but disabled people are not marginalized from the workforce as well. So there's some disabled people who are in our workforce and some who can actually work from home and support a lot of the things that we have to do with regard to the single ICT space. Developing ICT financial solutions. I think, you know, we don't do well with electronic payments and receipts across the region, so there's a whole window of opportunity there. And of course, reskilling the people who may have the sector awareness and the sector skill, but who need the ICT addition to make them very viable in the what we want to do for the region, for the digital economy. Again, the conversation with regard to skilling and reskilling our populace is not a simple one, and hopefully will not stay at the bottom of the pyramid where we're just all users and able to use Microsoft Office and PowerPoint and that type of thing. We're really aiming to be at the top of the pyramid where it says ICT creators, where we can do things with the ICT, having been using it at the middle layer as an enabling tool for our work, but then going to the higher level and using ICT to really innovate or incrementally innovate. Again, the single space is not cast in stone. The main message is that we are hoping that it will provide the digital layer for whatever we're doing already in the single market and economy activity. But some of the characteristics that you might see and that we'll be working on in the next year are looking at developing what we're calling loosely a copyright policy. A number of our people are doing great work, but are scared because they don't have the legal and regulatory framework to protect them to share the work. Hopefully we can develop what is called a copyright policy at the regional level, which gives them some first step of protection before they have to go and get their own copyrights or whatever the case might be. We're still thinking it through, and I welcome everybody to help me think. Caricom, I think, goes without saying, but it helps us to, one, identify, extend our Caricom brand, and it will help our entrepreneurs who perhaps want to identify or help us be identified to use that top-level domain. So I will be, as part of a team, obviously working with ICANN to work on getting that ready for the region. Better spectrum allocation is one of the things that is perhaps a, excuse me, a good possibility for the region to get some much needed funds if we participate or try to participate in what is called the digital dividend opportunity, where numbers of regions and countries are looking at unused pieces of spectrum and seeing if they can sell them back to operators for whatever reason they may wish, and so get some money for a regional implementation fund for ICT projects. We're attempting a single ICT market, obviously with rules, harmonization, policies, all of those things. Looking at things simple but effective for investors and people going from country to country, like a single emergency number. People shouldn't have to land in Guyana or Suriname or Belize and try to figure out what is the emergency number if I really had an emergency. The single information space is one of the things that excites me. I think we have a lot of wastage in our information arena, in our information pockets, agency to agency, and if we could at least start to harmonize that information across certain sectors or data sets across government and in related agencies, I think it would push us a far way. Every day, once a week, I get a request from somebody across the sea asking, could I give them a particular bit of information, which obviously I know we don't have in a data set anywhere. For example, people write all the time and say, can you tell me how many people are actively employed in the public sector in the region? I don't have that data. So little things like that, which may seem innocuous, but obviously can add value to our viability and opportunity to compete in the digital economy. The others, reduced or limited roaming rates, we started to work on with Digicel. And some of you in the OECS enjoyed that for probably from October to about February of this year. And then it was removed. We're still, I guess, going to keep the conversation up with Digicel to see how we can do it. But that was for voice roaming. And I'm sure that those of you who are in the industry would recognize that the more interesting one would be to get some reduction on data roaming charges so that you can actually innovate real time and that type of thing. Uniform measurement and monitoring goes without saying, but our statistics are not in a good place. And particularly, although we as a region decided to, we resolved to collect information with regard to the Millennium Development Goals, we still don't have those harmonized. We don't have it from every country. And even at the very, very empirical level, things like our census, we still have countries who have not given their 2000 census data to the Secretariat, people who are struggling with 2010 census, and again, the thing I just said to you about how many people are in the public sector, when we had the opportunity of one laptop per child in the first instance, I was at the meeting, Mr. Negroponte was probably 2 down from me, and he looked across and said, how much would the region need? And I had no idea. We don't know how many people are in the region. We don't know how many children are in the region, whatever. So it may seem simple, but it has implications and repercussions way down the line, because you have to have data to be able to plan, project, do everything you want to do. So I can't reinforce that enough. I'm going to start wrapping up, I think. I hope that in what I've said before, you realize that we're trying to create economies of scale. I think I said it at the beginning. No one of our countries, no matter how sophisticated we now think we are, has the requisite relevant economy of scale to do it alone. So we need to really re-engage with regard to the regional process and try to get as much as we can from the digital economy. I spoke about a number of things on the slide already. The uniform environment for investment is particularly important, and it continues to beset us. Investors are becoming increasingly non-thrilled with having to go to each country and go to 7 ministries to be able to set up a business, to find how to get a telephone and that type of thing. So the more we can help in that single space to push information to the investors, help them to do a lot of the stuff that they want to do online, the better it will be for our region eventually. ICT is, I just want to reinforce that ICT is everybody's business. We had a conversation, I think, in the corridor yesterday. Somebody was saying, and you ICT people, and I was saying to her, so what makes you different from me? And we were having a good giggle about it, but it is everybody's business because, as you can see on the slide, it's foreign policy, it's legal affairs, it's human and social development, it's climate change, disaster, everything. So we all have to be engaged. We don't have enough hands on board if you just leave it to the ICT people. And we obviously need the sector intervention and marrying with the ICT to make it really ICT for good development. Endless possibilities as we continue to explore. I don't need to go into them. I'm probably speaking to most of the converted, but keep thinking, keep an open mind as we think about it. But as we continue to develop the sector for the region and to use it as a tool for our continued development, there's some things that are already on the ground that I wanted to share with you. First of all, we have the makings of a good governance structure if everything worked as it should be. We already have a lead head identified, and that's the Prime Minister of Grenada. It does not go with the person, it goes with the post. So whoever is Prime Minister is the lead head with responsibility for ICT. We have something which was recently formed called the ICT cluster, which comprises the CBU, CTU, CKLN, Caricom, and the Caricom Secretariat, which is called the ICT Cluster, and reports directly to the Secretary General, and he obviously reports directly to the Prime Minister of Grenada. At the working level, the worker bee level, technical level, we have the senior ICT officials where every member state has one or two focal points in that grouping, and I'm still waiting for some names from some member states. But it also includes the youth ambassadors, and it struck me yesterday, I was asking, where's the Suriname youth ambassador? We need to make sure that the youth continue to be engaged because I think we're leaving this world for them, we're planning for them, and so we need to ensure that they're engaged. And on the senior ICT officials body, the youth ambassador has a place there, one representative. We also have the ICT lead agencies in that body under the COTED. They report to the COTED, both of those groups. And in there we have all the regional institutions in the cluster, and ICANN, ITU, UNESCO are parts of that body as well. With regard to coordination, just want to put it up before everybody so that you know where to go when you hear all of these things and when you hear single ICT space. At their meeting in March, the heads confirmed that the Caricom Secretariat is responsible for the coordination of digital economy activities and that all the organizations are required to cooperate and collaborate so that we can have a successful development. Part of developing and looking where we want to go is also exploiting what we already have. I've spoken about strategies, I've spoken about CXCs, new courses. Research and development, as I said, was stressed by Suriname, stressed by all the trade and economic development ministers, but we have the Caribbean Research and Education Network. How many people know of it? CaribNet. And every member state is supposed to have an NREN. I'm not seeing too many hands. This is not a good thing. And then our universities, of course, have always led the charge with research and development, but we need to bring them on in a better streamlined way and also to encourage our colleagues in the private sector and civil society to help us research as well. There is some work in education, particularly looking at an innovation in education policy in this year. And we need to recognize that most of the CSME initiatives that we've looked at already, free movement, contingent rights, all of those things already support the digital economy, but how do we use them for maximum benefit continues to be some of the things on our to-do list. In closing, I think this is my second to last slide. Did I get my 15 minutes? Okay. I said it before, no country can do it alone, no matter how we kid ourselves. Things like internet governance and cybersecurity are so huge, so many players, so many issues that I don't even think anybody would want to wake up and think we can do this alone. We need to free the regional internet. We talk about it a lot, and those of us in the room may be the haves, but we need to think about the have-nots very, very seriously. How do we get the internet that people need for simple things, those who are in our rural areas, those who are underserved, those who are poor, how do we get the internet into their hands so that they can become good, productive citizens for each of our countries? Broadband rollout needs to be ramped up. We need to liberalize our telecoms markets. I said it before. I won't name people today. We need to raise the profile of our cultural and creative industries. Content, content, content. The lovely things that we love when we look at a dress on Amazon and then I go to I don't know, somebody else. Google search, and my red dress floats across the screen. Didn't happen by chance. Content, sophisticated databases, people looking and validating those databases every minute of the day and night so that they're constantly pushing your content and other content to you. We have to exploit the sector linkages said before. Private sector engagement, different from private sector involvement. We need to bring the private sector to the table because we have not had the benefit or the luck. I don't believe in luck, but we haven't had the luck of our private sector leading with innovation in this region. So now we have to bring them and sort of help lead them to innovation and the things we want to do. Resource mobilization I've spoken about before. I have a challenge for us as summit participants. I think we all have to take on board the great opportunity and responsibility we have as ICT practitioners. But I must confess that I'm not going to be thrilled if I come next year and I see all of you in the room. It means I'm talking to the converted and I'm wasting my time, and we're wasting the region's time. So we need to talk to the people who are not inside this room, and we need to encourage them to get into the room with us so that they understand what we think we understand and can share it with their wider groups and wider communities. So let's move from talk to action. Let's bring the real people who we need to have at the table with us. But then how can we use some of the talents and the issues and the skills that I see in the room and outside the room between yesterday and today to really support the single space, support Caricom ICT development? And then I wanted to challenge all of us to come up with at least 3 practical solutions to regional needs, and let's showcase them at next year's summit. Anybody in it with me? I have about 10, but we can start with 3. And then I thank you for your attention, and let's build the single space together. Thank you. Any question? That's my contact.